house prices are going to go up, they're going to come down. But it's just, if you can get in, then get in. And, you know, like a lot of the things that I learned on my journey was, but I always used to wonder how Indians and that could buy so many houses. And I learned, bro, they bought as families. So, you know, like the mum, dad, the 2 kids, they would buy as a family, and then after 5 or so years, then they'd buy another house. They'll use the equity. And, bro, I guess as Maori and PIs, we live exactly the same, but we rent.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, like, if there's a fallout, the family's like, who gets the house? I mean, but, you know, that's basically how a lot of them do it, is just buying collectively. And then, like, I was watching an ad last night, like Kiwi Bank, they're like big on that now, that's one of their advertisements on TV is, you know, buying with siblings or cousins and stuff like that, which is, I've seen it for years, but obviously a lot of people or the main banks, I guess, just sort of really drilling that now, getting it out there.
Yeah, it's been the case for, like I said, for the Indians, because you know they're the ones that got the 8-bedroom homes, 6-bedroom homes, and you wonder why, but because they got a lot of families and they're all paying for it.
That's
and
it,
then
man.
they just go, they just get another house and go.
But I used to have this one family for years, man, that I used to look after, you know, and bro, they had nothing when they started, but they saved hard for a year. I mean, the house prices went high back then, but you know, they just bought, and bro, there was heaps of them living, or not heaps, but you know, there's about 5 of them living, and there was like a 4-bedroom house. And then 5 years later, they came back. Well, I'd always see them in the branch, and then they came back. They go, Vinnie, we want to buy another house. And I said, oh, yeah, this is what you have to do. So they go and get a valuation, good equity in the house, and then pull that out, buy another one. And then that family, you know, half of the family moved into that one. But next minute, they got the whole street. You know what I mean? That's how they do it, which is a smart way of doing things, you know?
Yeah.
Real smart.
But it's also interesting how, you know, like you said, like Pacific Islanders, and they lack that. They lack saving for a long period of time. And I think that's the key, because it's like, oh, I'm the one save for 2 years, or, you know.
Yeah.
It's too long. But
especially with the young ones, like, you know, some of the young guys, you know, like families I've spoken to anyway, you know, and they're like, oh, we're real keen, and they're like, oh, yeah, so what do you have for savings? Like, oh, I've got a Kiwi saver. And I'm like, oh, awesome. Do you have any debt? And like, oh, yeah, we just went and bought this $50,000 car. Sorry?
Yeah.
What the? But, you know, but we don't judge. Like, it is what it is. That's their circumstance. We're like, oh, but, you know, this is what you have to do. If you really want it, you know, you got to take ownership of you know, your spending and stuff like that, and work to a budget, you know. Because if you keep buying that, you know, because, you know, the interest on them's high, eh? You know, you might pay back, you buy it for 50, but you're paying 80 grand back at the end of it. So, yeah, just, like I said, just having the conversations, you know, and so they understand it. Because I was young, you know, so I remember when I got a car and I just ticked it up, but I didn't care what anyone said. I just wanted to sign that thing and take off in the car, you know. Everyone goes through it, you know. So, yeah, it's just, sitting in their shoes. I knew what it was back then, so, you know, you don't judge them. You're just like, oh, well, this is what we do moving forward, you know.
Is it discipline, eh?
It is, yeah. It's definitely discipline. Also, I think it has to come from deep down, like, you know, do you really, like, sometimes I've had honest conversations, I said, well, do you really want a house, or, like, what do you want? And they're like, oh, no, just, you know, one of my mates bought a house, and I sort of want to, you know, buy a house. And it's like, but you got to do it for, like, you know, at the end of the day, not just because someone else has got it. Like, if you really want to do it, then, you know, I'm more than happy to help you, you know. But I always say it's going to be a hard journey. It's not just an overnight thing, but you got to stick to it. But we got to remember as well, you know, like, especially with island families, when we're helping them budget, we got to think, you know, if something happens back, you know, in the islands, or, you know, funerals and that, you know, potentially they'll go and take loans out for that or whatever. So I think it's understanding as well that cultural aspect of things, that those things, you know, they do pop up, right? And it's just being ready for that. But we have those conversations from the get-go anyway. You know, just why don't you put a little bit in case, you know, something happens, and then instead of borrowing 10,000, you only have to borrow 5,000, you know. But we put the onus on them, you know, so they're in control of what they do. We don't tell them what to do. We just sort of give them the tools to go away and leave it up to them. But we keep in touch with them. Obviously, like I said, a lot of families I've been helping for 12 months, 18 months. So I just check in with them, how's things going and that. Because I think what I learned when I was in the banking, I'll do that, but then I wouldn't follow up. And so that's what I mean. You know, the learnings that I learned around that whole follow-up piece is real important, because then it keeps them engaged, it keeps them taking ownership of, you know, and still driving towards their goals. So, yeah.
So these days, like, what's the average amount of years to save for average family?
For a house?
Yeah.
Bro, it depends on circumstance. I mean, like...
So then the prices came down a little bit, eh?
Yeah, so the prices are definitely flattened at the moment. It's definitely a buyer's market versus a seller's market.
And that's because of inflation, right?
Yeah, but that's one of them, but it's a number of things. You know, it's the cost of living as well. It's all sorts of things. But why I think it's a buyers, I think personally it's going to heat up again, because, you know, a lot more people are coming to Auckland, you know, from overseas. Obviously, when we were hit by COVID, there was no international travel. So now, you know, it's little things like you hear the government going, oh, we need special, you know, we need nurses. So we're giving extra incentives for nurses to come from overseas. Well, they need to buy houses. So now everything's opening up. You know, we've got nurses, you know, we've got specialized construction people coming, you know, heaps coming in from the Philippines and stuff like that. So, you know, and they're good with money, they're motivated, and they want to buy houses, especially over in this market. But it's like, my own opinion is, if you want to buy a house, it's not that hard, especially if you've got KiwiSaver. KiwiSaver is, man, such an awesome way to buy a house. But then, with that being said, there's other aspects, other avenues, like through kāinga ora. So we speak to clients about kāinga ora, and automatically you speak about kāinga ora, and they're like, oh no, we don't want to buy that house because, you know, we don't know who lives next door, could be dodgy people, because that's the perception, right, of kāinga ora. But actually, the way I explain it is like, kāinga ora is like the umbrella, and they have avenues that come under that. So there's the home loan grant, there's the home loan, kāinga ora home loan, there's the partnership, you know, and you may fit into one of those spaces, and that's, once again, you know, money that you can use towards a deposit. So we've managed, you know, we've used those avenues to help people, especially with the home loan grant. I mean, you know, you can get up to $10,000 each on a new build, you know, and that's 20 grand towards your deposit plus your KiwiSaver. And yeah, so there's avenues there for a deposit. But the way I always say is, going back to your question, bro, sorry, in a roundabout way, say, for example, if you want to know what your deposit is, if you're looking at, say, 800,000, you need 20%, which is, what, 160. But you can have 10%, but you can only go to your bank. So if you're at Westpac, you can only go to Westpac. And there's... Sometimes I'll turn the funding on, sometimes I'll turn the funding off, because they're only allowed a certain percent of that type of lending that they call high risk with a small deposit within their system.
Because you've been at that bank for so long, they know.
Yeah. But because your income goes in there, they know, oh, you're loyal. Because what they were doing before is, say if we had, say us three had 10%, and we'd just go to any bank, they'd go, yep, here's your pre-approval for 10%. And then we're sitting in that space for 3 months, we haven't found one, so we want to extend it again. And so it starts chewing into that certain percent that they're allowed. So that's why all the banks turned it off and said, no, we're not doing it. We're going to look after our own clients, and we'll only give you a pre-approval at 10% if you come with a sales and purchase agreement with an offer. So it's a live deal. So then they know, okay, we're going to approve it at your 10%, and we know you're going to be out in a month's time because you're settling. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, a lot of things I think the banks put in place, and then they learn that, oh, that's not working, we need to change it to this, and then it just sets off that domino effect.